This video will demonstrate how to create a recorded macro which will apply multiple find and replace commands at the same time. So firstly, I'm going to select the data that I want to record the macro on, which will be in cells B2 to B3. From there, I'm going to go to the View tab, go across to Macros, and record macro. I'm going to call it Clean Data, and I'm going to store it in my personal macro workbook, which essentially means that any Excel workbooks I've got open, I'll be able to run this particular macro. So from here, I'm going to put a brief description. And then from there, click on OK. And now the macro is recording. Now the only indication that it is recording is on the status bar, I've got this little blue square, which when I hover my mouse over it, you can see it says a macro is currently recording. Click to stop recording. From here, I'm going to press Ctrl F. And firstly, I'm going to type in a /, and then click on Replace, and then click on Replace All. And from there you can see that Excel's completed its search and made two replacements. However, I've still got a / to remove. So I'm going to click on OK, replace the / with the /, again click on Replace All, again click on OK, click on Close, and then I'm going to click onto the blue square to stop recording the macro. Now, I want this macro to run over this data in column A. Now, it's got about 100,000 records, so quite a sizable chunk of data, and you can see that it's actually got more than just / and / that I might want to remove. It's also got colons and also hyphens. So first thing I'm going to do is actually edit the actual macro. So again, I'm going to go over to the View, Macros. This time I'm going to click on View Macros. Select the macro that I want to edit, and you'll notice that it's stored in my personal macro workbook. So firstly, what I need to do, if I click onto Edit, it will say I can't edit a macro on a hidden workbook, so I need to unhide the personal macro workbook. So to do that, I click on OK, click on Cancel. Again, it should be in the View tab. Select Unhide. Make sure the personal macro workbook is selected, and click on OK. From here, if I click on Macros again, View Macros, Clean Data, click on Edit, and from here you'll see the basic macro. And you can see there are basically two steps. The first step is the first find and replace, and the second step is the second find and replace. So from here, if I create a little bit more space and select the first part, press Ctrl C from the keyboard to copy, click into the macro just below the second part of the macro and press Ctrl V, go down a line and press it again, and just tidy this up a little bit, and do the same for the section above. And from here, all I need to do is replace the / with what I want to remove. So the first thing I want to remove is the colon. So if I select the /, replace it with a colon, and then do the same for the second section, and I want to replace the / with a hyphen. And that's essentially all I need to do. So from there, if I close the VBA editor down, click on the cross, close the personal macro workbook down, so I'm going to click onto Hide, so it just hides it out of the way. And now when I select the data, so I'm going to click from A2, I'm going to press Ctrl Shift down. As you can see, that goes to row 100,000. I'm going to press Ctrl Backspace to go back up to the top again. And from here, I'm going to run the macro. So I'm going to click onto my macros, select View Macros, make sure I've selected the Clean Data macro, and from there I'm going to click on Run. Now this macro will take about a minute or so to actually run, so I will pause this after I've clicked on Run and return back when it's done. So as you can see, the macro is now run. It took about a minute and a half. This particular PC is reasonably powerful, but it is rather old. It's about 3 or 4 years old, and it's got about 8 gigabytes with the RAM. Now from here, of course, this macro is going to be available for other workbooks as well, and I previously opened up another workbook called Sample Data. So if I minimize this particular workbook and go to Sample Data, and if I run this macro again, now of course I could put this macro in my quick access toolbar at the top, which is what I'll actually do. So if I click on the drop down arrow, select more commands. From there, if I change the popular commands to macros, go down to my clean data, move it across. Perhaps I might want to change or modify the actual way that this particular button looks. So I'm going to look at perhaps the dollar signs, click on OK, select OK again, and from there again select the data, because this macro is designed to run on the data that's selected. So again, Control Shift down, Control backspace, click onto the dollar sign, and off it goes. And hopefully again that will take about a minute and a half. Again, this macro has taken about 1 minute 30 or so to run. You'll notice also that the data has been aligned from the right, which perhaps indicates that Excel treats this particular data as numbers. So if I go to my Home tab, and that would appear to be the case. Now you might not want numbers, you might want text. So of course from here what you could do is change all this data into text. So if I click on the drop down, go down to text, click on the text button, and now it's applied with the text format. Again, that does rather depend on what you want to do with the data. Now the advantage of using this method is that you can have multiple different sections within the macro depending on what type of data you've actually got. So you've got one macro which fits all the data you might want to clean. Now of course there are lots of other different ways of cleaning data. You could perhaps use the text to columns utility in the data tab. You could also use various functions, for example things like trim and clean, left, right, mid, and various other ones. But if you've got multiple find and replaces you want to do, then obviously this is quite a good way of accomplishing that. And another alternative utility that you might find useful is that if you're using a version of Excel from 2013 onwards, there is also something called Flash Fill. Now this is 2010, so it's not available, but that is also well worth looking at. Now finally, if I close this particular Excel file down, now I'm not going to save it though, and I'll close this one down as well, and again don't save it. Now from here this window opens asking you whether you want to save the changes to your personal macro workbook, and essentially that is the macro we've just recorded. So from here, if you do want to save it, click on to save. If you don't, just click on don't save. So I'm going to click on save, and then that then closes down Excel.